Fox News contributor Payne forcefully criticized what he described as an organized anti-president campaign, arguing that certain media outlets and political commentators are actively working to undermine President Trump rather than report objectively on his leadership. Payne claimed that negative coverage, selective framing of events, and the repeated amplification of criticism have created a distorted narrative that influences how the public views the president. He suggested that this pattern is not accidental, but part of a broader effort to shape public opinion by emphasizing doubt, controversy, and division while downplaying accomplishments or policy successes. According to Payne, the constant drumbeat of skepticism conditions viewers to question Trump's motives and competence, regardless of context or evidence. He warned that when journalism shifts from reporting facts to pushing narratives, it erodes trust not only in political leaders, but also in the media itself. Payne framed the issue as a battle over perception, arguing that the presidency is being judged through a lens of hostility rather than fairness, and urged audiences to critically evaluate headlines, polls, and commentary instead of accepting them at face value. The criticism comes at a moment when new Fox News polling data indicates a noticeable rise in public skepticism toward President Trump, particularly on questions of leadership, temperament, and handling of major national issues. The polls suggest that while Trump maintains strong support among his core base, doubts are growing among independents and undecided voters who remain influential in shaping broader public opinion. Analysts point out that these numbers reflect concerns tied to ongoing political conflicts, legal battles, and the intensity of partisan debate surrounding the presidency. Supporters argue that polls often fail to capture enthusiasm or are influenced by how questions are framed, while critics say the data signals real fatigue and uncertainty among voters. The Fox News polls have fueled debate across media platforms, with commentators dissecting whether the results represent a temporary dip or a deeper shift in voter sentiment. Payne and other Trump allies caution against treating polling numbers as definitive judgments, stressing that public opinion can change rapidly in response to economic conditions, global events, or campaign messaging. Still, the polling results have become a focal point in the national conversation, reinforcing the narrative that Trump faces not only political opposition, but also a challenging battle to reassure skeptical voters as the political climate grows more polarized. Payne warned that selective polling methods and consistently negative framing are being weaponized to weaken public confidence in President Trump, especially at a time when political stakes are rising. He argued that how questions are worded, which data points are highlighted, and which voices are amplified can dramatically shape perceptions, often presenting an incomplete or misleading picture. According to Payne, polls that emphasize doubt or dissatisfaction without proper context risk becoming tools of persuasion rather than measurements of public opinion. He stressed that repeated exposure to unfavorable narratives can influence undecided voters by normalizing skepticism and portraying controversy as constant. Payne also pointed to the timing of such polls, suggesting they are often released to coincide with major political debates or policy decisions, maximizing their impact on public discourse. He cautioned that this strategy can create a feedback loop where negative coverage fuels poor polling, which then justifies further negative coverage. In Payne's view, this cycle distorts reality and distracts from substantive policy discussions. He urged audiences to look beyond headlines and poll percentages, reminding them that leadership should be evaluated on outcomes and long-term impact, not momentary shifts in media-driven sentiment. Supporters of President Trump argue that the polling numbers and media narratives fail to accurately reflect the strength and loyalty of his core base, pointing instead to his economic record, immigration policies, and foreign policy stance as evidence of effective leadership. They contend that many voters who strongly support Trump are often underrepresented or less likely to participate in traditional surveys, skewing results toward a more negative outlook. Backers also emphasize that past elections have shown Trump outperforming expectations, suggesting that enthusiasm and turnout matter more than polling snapshots. On the other hand, critics maintain that the polls capture genuine concerns shared by a broad segment of the electorate, including independents and moderates who are uneasy about political instability, rhetoric, and ongoing controversies. They argue that dismissing unfavorable data risks ignoring warning signs that could shape future elections. This divide underscores a larger debate about how political success should be measured, through policy achievements and loyal supporters, or through broader appeal and public confidence. As both sides clash over interpretation, the polling numbers have become less about statistics and more about competing narratives, each using the data to reinforce deeply held political beliefs. The ongoing clash underscores a widening gap between media narratives, polling interpretations, and unwavering political loyalty as the 2026 election cycle begins to take shape. For many voters, trust in traditional institutions has fractured, leaving polls and headlines open to suspicion depending on partisan alignment. Media outlets are increasingly accused of shaping perception rather than merely reporting facts, while political figures and commentators argue over which version of reality voters should believe. This tension has turned polling data into a political weapon used not only to measure opinion but to influence momentum, donor confidence, and public morale. Loyal supporters often view negative coverage as proof of bias, reinforcing their commitment, while undecided voters may see the same information as a signal of instability or risk. As campaigns intensify, this disconnect is likely to grow sharper, with narratives battling for dominance across television, digital platforms, and social media. The result is a political environment where emotion, identity, and perception carry as much weight as policy itself. In this climate, elections are no longer just contests of ideas, but struggles over credibility, trust, and who ultimately defines the national story.